There's some things going on right now in Minneapolis that are genuinely disconcerting, if for no other reason other than the way the death of George Flynn has inspired violent protests all over the United States, including my hometown, Nashville, Tennessee. And here's my thought. If you've got a point, man, let's hear it. But before you begin, let's remember that in order to arrive at the right conclusions, you've got to be asking the right questions. So I got some questions. Tell me what you think. Question number one. Is there a difference between murder and involuntary manslaughter? Well, yeah, there's a difference. The difference is intent. If the officers here in question intended to kill George Flynn, they don't need to be just fired. They need to be imprisoned. But if it was an accidental type of thing, then that needs to be processed, and it needs to be regarded as such before you simply accuse them of police brutality. So, question number one. Question number two. Is it a logical practice to evaluate a system based on the way it's abused? No. You don't evaluate a system based on the way it's abused any more than you evaluate an entire people group based on the actions of a select few. You hold individuals responsible for their actions and not the systems and demographics they belong to. Otherwise, you inevitably wind up indicting innocent people and you become the very thing you claim to despise. All right, question number three. Should resisting arrest change your status from suspect to threat in the mind of a police officer? Listen, if I'm going too fast on the road and a police officer pulls up behind me to give me a citation and I respond by taking off, well, in his mind, I'm no longer just guilty of speeding. I'm now a fugitive from justice, and I've given him every reason to think that I am guilty of something far more heinous than just exceeding the speed limit. If you don't want to be treated like a criminal, then don't act like one. All right, question number four. Does being a hypocrite advance your cause or compromise it? How can you expect your disdain for criminal activity to be perceived as righteous indignation if in that moment you're engaged in criminal activity yourself? That doesn't help things at all. If you want your platform to be heard, you can't allow your actions to drown out the sound of your voice. You hear what I'm saying? That's important. Question number five. Are you listening to what's being said, or are you simply listening for what's being said so you now have an excuse to be irresponsible? Listen, I'm not just talking about Minneapolis. You've seen the verses that I've been scrolling beneath the screen. This applies to any kind of scenario. But the bottom line is, back in the day, the Israelites were waiting at the foot of Mount Sinai, and just as soon as a few of them felt like it had been too long for Moses to come down, they were going way south and taking as many people with them as possible. You don't want to do that. Do you know all the relevant facts, or are you simply looking for an excuse to engage in something heinous just because now you feel like you're justified in doing so? Last question, and this one's huge. Do you validate your cause as being consistent with the Word of God simply by citing specific scriptures, or is something more required? A verse has to be rightly applied in order for a particular perspective to resonate as something truly biblical. Satan tried to get Christ to a place where he was willing to make some concessions by quoting the Bible. Jesus revealed and refuted that strategy by providing the missing context, and that's the same thing that we need to do. Food for thought. Listen, any place where you have people, you've got the possibility of corruption, and you want to weed that nonsense out by holding individuals responsible for their actions and not entire paradigms. If you want to be an agent of change, if you want to be on the side of good, then you want to make sure that you're targeting the problem and not contributing to it. And that's going to start by asking the right questions. Bruce Gust, Muscular Christianity, go get it.